applications. HUD has not yet released the program year 2025 CDBG funding allocation. On March the 15th, President Trump signed a continuing resolution that provides a full year funding through September 30th for 2025 for federal programs at fiscal year 2024 funding levels. What that means basically is that we're going to be given the same amount of funds as last year. So we will be receiving $888,487. However, out of that amount, only 15% is for public service, and that amount is going to be $133,273.05. So that's what will be allocated for the public service entities. So City Council will be deciding how to divvy up that amount from all the applications that are received. Today, Tammy Duke, she's the program assistant. She will be conducting the workshop. She has been key in getting all this together and preparing, revamping the applications that were a little outdated, and basically reviewing all of our forms, making sure everything was up to date, setting this up. So, Tammy Duke.
First, as we get started, I'm going to have the spiritual care coordinator from hospice come and lead us in a word of prayer as we start.
All right. Do I need to use the mic, or can I just do this?
You can talk loud.
Okay. Let's pray. Father, you have provided the passion that we have in our own particular areas. You have provided the opportunities that are out there. You have provided the resources that we need. And Father, now we ask that you will provide the wisdom, the understanding, the opportunity for us to do something that makes a difference. And I just thank you for that. So Lord, open the doors and help us to have courage and walk through them. Help us, Lord, to find in you the resources that we need, and that you will always get the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Clark. Okay, as we get started, everybody should have an application packet, and this meeting is simply to just go through if you have any questions about the application, about what has to be required, documents that go with the application, and eligibility for your organization. What things are eligible to be used as a public service or facilities, and those are separate things. Public services, public facilities. So keep that in mind when you're applying for funds, that as we go through this, sometimes what you're applying for may cover public services and public facilities. So you can apply for both of those, okay? You can go ahead. So the first thing, application, Community Development Block Grant Funds, as Naira kind of mentioned earlier, and this is program year 2025. And so I know that and that's kind of confusing sometimes. So program year 2025 is fiscal year 26 for the city. So we're actually get 3 months of 25 and then we're in 26, but we're using program year 25 money, okay? Right now we're in program year 24. Those that have received money last year, you're looking at your financials 25, but it's 24. It can be quite confusing. You have to double look. So we're going to review the application packet, see what a complete application is, and the ways that you can submit them. And then if you have any questions, just ask. As we're going through, if you have a question that is pertinent to what we're talking about, please just ask me, so that we don't have to backtrack, because sometimes that can be hard. So now we're going over the funds that are available, and those funds are, right now we don't know if those are set in stone or not. Like you said, those have not, the amounts haven't been released yet. But this is what is included your application cover sheet, organizational information, project information, all the required documents, and a very important thing is that conflict of interest, if you should have any of that, okay? So the first thing we'll look at is the, application cover sheet, just the general information, almost, no, that's fine, general information is good. Deadline, so May the 5th at 4 p.m. is the deadline for the applications. They can be submitted online and signed electronically. That is not preferred. The preference way to do it is to deliver them in person, please. Just because sometimes documents, they just don't do well being.
On here it says complete application.
It does say May 6th, yes. That was an error. We did have to even put in the paper. It was an error, printing error, so, but it is Monday, May the 5th. Cinco de Mayo, that's when it's due. So we're gonna party while we look over applications.
Is it due
So,
like by 5 p.m.?
4 p.m.
4
4 p.m. It does say 4 p.m., doesn't it? Okay, so the application cover sheet, that's this one. And you can just double click it. So that is the organization name and the amount requested. Very important. I know it seems simple, but this is one of the first things that gets looked at. And you remember, if you're covering two, I'll give an example, public facilities, you need beds or dressers for, a facility. That's public facilities. If you need to provide food or eye care or medical, that's public services. So those are two different things, and they have to have two different applications. Okay, so you will have to, for each thing, it will be a separate application. Okay? Your organizational information on the next page, all of that, just simple stuff there. Date of incorporation, tax ID number, and DUNS number are all very important. Also, the annual operating budget of your organization, very important, because that's something that they are really gonna look at. Because we have to determine, things that we have to determine on our end is, does the organization have the capacity to follow through with the money they're requesting to spend? Because remember, these funds, very importantly, are done on a reimbursement basis. So you spend the money, then you turn in your receipt and request the reimbursement. Hopefully, those will only take a couple weeks to get reimbursed back. Once all that final reporting and paperwork, you have quarterly reports, and once you apply and we get all the applications in, then we'll have a technical workshop on how those funds work. How all of the paperwork, then it gets a little more entailed than just the application. So detailed records are extremely important. On the next page, the mission of the organization and your experience with any grants, not just little one-liners, tell your story. City Council is going to get these, and I want them to really know what your purpose is, not just, we're going to feed 30 people. They need a backstory behind that. Let them look at it. So when that book goes to them, they know. Give an example of a family that you've helped, or a situation where they were here and now they're here. Because they need to know that, because a lot of times members of the City Council won't know what your story is. And I'll be honest with you, they expect us to do that footwork for them so that they don't have to. Because a lot of them, they're going to get inundated with it, so they need it right there. So tell your story. By all means, tell your story.
On that, excuse me, Tammy, on that same note, remember, we're limited on funds. It's only $133,000. So with the more information they have, it's like a competition of whoever has the most information. They're gonna be, reviewing all of these applications, so just bear that in mind, that more information, that's more knowledge for them of where and how these funds will be used.
Right, and that also goes back to your facilities and your public services, because if you're wanting to, do something in a community center or a room, then that falls into a different bracket of money, so you want to keep that in mind, okay? Project information. This is the meat of it all right here. I know these boxes are kind of small, but they're a whole lot bigger than they were previously. But this is where you, again, tell your story, tell exactly what you need, how many people you're gonna help. This is for low income, you know, it's low to moderate income, and your area has to be, the area you're serving has to be low to moderate income. And so if that's facilities, then you're gonna wanna make sure that surrounding area, then it might be limited clientele, maybe you serve homeless people or elderly people, or you have an application process that singles out what's low income, and then that becomes limited clientele. You know that the percentage of people that you're serving, and as long as what you're serving, 51% of them or over are low to moderate income, then you're gonna qualify, even if the other 49% are not low income, as long as that 51% is low income, okay? Any questions about that? And those are presumed benefits. So on that, you'll see presumed benefits, so they automatically get the benefit even if they might not meet that income level. And that's abused children, battered spouses, elderly persons, disabled, severely disabled, homeless persons, illiterate persons, migrant farm workers, persons living with AIDS, and a lot of your organizations here deal with a lot of that. And so those are presumed benefits. So those are automatically going to qualify. You're presuming that everybody that you help is going to be in one of those categories. Okay, describe the impact of the project. Very important. What impact do you think, if you receive that money, what is that going to do for the community? How is that going to help what's in the people in your community? Is it going to help them find a job? Is it going to help them get out of the situation that they're in? Is it going to keep them safe, warm, cool, off the streets? Those kind of things. And you want to go into detail with that. It doesn't have to fit in this box. Add a piece of paper. Write a book. It's fine, because every little bit will help. Okay, the next part, required documents. So even if you have received funds before, we are in the beginning of a 5-year con plan, which we're going to discuss very briefly at the end of this. So everything has to be fresh and new for the next, because we're going to start the new 5-year action plan, 1-year action plan, 5-year con plan. So that's why detail in this application is so important, because as we're creating that con plan, we want to make sure if something is new that needs to be done in the community, that's included in that con plan. Because if you apply for something and it's not in our con plan, then even if we wanted, city council wanted to give the money, they couldn't, because it's not included in our con plan. So we have to know what you want to do in the community. Even if it doesn't happen this year, if you want to see it 5 years from now, if you want to build a community center or anything, we need to know that so that can be included in the con plan, in our con plan. So project budget, articles of incorporation, these are just usual things that most nonprofits are going to have right there on hand. Your determination, list of board of directors, request for authorization of funds, that's just where you went to your board and said, hey, we're going to be applying for this money. So your organizational chart, your personnel policy, operating budget, and all sources of funding that you have coming in. So, you know, if you receive money from United Way or you receive this, we need to know about, well, they need to know about all of that money. It helps them make informed decisions, because sometimes they have to, you know, somebody wants $30,000 and somebody wants $40,000, but the one that wants this amount of money really is a greater need, and they have the $40,000 request, they have a lot of funding, then city council may have to say, well, they really need this right now, and they don't have any other sources of income, so maybe we need to give them their whole amount. But by doing that, we have to cut them by $5,000, or I've seen it as little as $1,000 or $2,000. But they have to make those, but that's why that backstory is so very, very important. Financial statements and audit, those are usually very, you know, self-explanatory, and proof of liability insurance is also very important. We wanna make sure that you're covered. Conflict of interest form. This has to be filled out by everybody, regardless, but if you think you might just have any kind of conflict of interest, just put it on there. And that way, you know, somebody can abstain from a vote, or, you know, that way we're covered. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Any questions about conflict of interest? No? Okay. Application certification. The most important piece of paper to me in here, when you turn it in, it has to be signed. It has to be signed by your president, so whoever in your organization is responsible for this contract. That contact person, that's who's gonna need to sign this. Who is gonna need to definitely sign that, first and foremost. Any questions right now? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so, in your application, neat and all put together like a little, you know, cute little packet. I'm gonna call it like your senior thesis. That's the way it has to be put together. Application, completed organizational information, completed project information, and remember, it doesn't have to just be in the little boxes. I know I've looked back on applications and there's just 3 or 4 little words in the little box. Write a story, write a story. Tell city council why, when, what, where, how, and what it's gonna do for this community. Because they need to know that, you know, we want them to know that. And the signed application certification. Okay, really, this is short and sweet. Any questions?
You had mentioned that, you had different pots of money.
Mm-hmm.
The different pots totals $133,000. Okay.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is more programmatic and not like building or capital campaign, things like that. Is that true?
Well, that comes under another, I mean,
It's not, but it's included in this 133?
it is,
Okay.
It
Like
is.
just facility improvements?
right, facility improvements, yes. Yes. And who's to say that, you know, there's other ways to go about it, but that could be, this is where you start. This is where you start. If that's what you're wanting to do.
And you talked about it being a reimbursable, so say I did run for capital, ground it right until 2027, would I need to wait until later on, or?
As long as you have plans in the process, as long, that money can be delayed, you know,
Okay.
yes, that money can be delayed. It has to be sent bill within a certain time frame. But yes, that money, but it has to be in the plan, it has to be working towards, like the architect designs, that stuff has to be ongoing when you apply. Yes, yes, but that can be, it doesn't have to be, like public services, it has to be spent before September 30th, or you lose it, it goes back. But when it's something like, building, as long as that is in progress, then we just keep, you know, and we do have to go back to city council the next year and say, okay, this allocation of funds, but it's not included in that program year because that's previous program year funds.
So that program money is shifted to the next.
To the next.
Which takes away from the ultimate pot.
Right, it doesn't get included in that pot. So it doesn't get, so then you.
It's already allocated.
Right, it's already allocated. So then if next year you thought, oh, well, we got $50,000 here, or whatever it is, but you're seeing as this gets started, oh, we might need another 40,000, it doesn't inhibit you from applying for next year's money. You can still apply for more money the following program year.
For something else related to that.
Right,
project.
like if you got to that project and you said, well, they gave us 30,000 or 40,000, but it's gonna cost 60 or 70,000, then yeah, as long as you have that documentation, yes, you can apply again, that doesn't have to be spent. You know, we're gonna have one that runs into that this year with facilities and that may have to go through that same thing, because it's just been delayed.
It would just be a matter of probably, asking city council for an extension.
Yeah. Yeah, it is just, we still have to go back to city council when the next allocation year, and they'd say, okay, this, and they would just reallocate it for you for the next
Yeah.
year. But then you could still get allocation of funds for something the year after. Anything else?
Yeah, if you submit an application for funding, and if you on some reason you were denied, will they come back to tell you what the problem was with your application, or why you were denied the funds?
Well, you come.
It'll be in
It'll
front
be
of
right here.
council, they'll tell you why, or
Okay,
they'll
well-
be here. They will make the decision, they will
Yeah.
be here. It will be a very long meeting, June the 24th is going to be 10 o'clock at night, where it's gonna be a very long meeting.
Okay, so that's when you know when you receive.
Yes.
Yes, you will know, you will come, so they'll get, submit your applications, we do all the processing, get a book together for them, they have all that information that they go over in a work session, but then that night, you get up and you present your case to city council. I don't present it for you, I mean, we kinda do the pre-presenting for you, but you get up and you state your case to city council, and they can ask you all the questions that they wanna
And
ask
I
you.
believe they'll come in for a work session as well.
Yeah, work session and that, so you have every opportunity to plead your case to city council.
Is there a time limit while we're pleading our case?
I think it's 3 minutes. I think it's 3 minutes, you don't get long,
That's why it's so important.
that's why that
you-
backstory.
that y'all fill out that application is complete with as much information as possible, and you can just add attachments. We reviewed the applications from other years, and, they were almost empty, like 2 or 3 little words or, short
It was
sentences.
very just, and I think that makes the meetings longer, because the city council doesn't really know what you're
They
doing.
start asking all these questions because the applications don't have sufficient information.
So
you're
that's why
doing
we
yourself a
have
disservice.
more, and I'll put, I mean, if the book is this thick, or, if it's that thick or that thick to city council, that's fine, I would love to have, this is not, you don't have to come to this meeting to apply, so there will be other people applying. But, knowledge is key, they've gotta know how it's supposed to work and how they're supposed to do it, and we have to have these meetings, this is a HUD regulated, we have to have them. So, that backstory, I cannot express how important that is to put in detail. And if you have a time frame, if you're wanting to do something and you know it's gonna be a 2-year, 3-year project, put that time frame in there, because this money can pay for architect fees for something, it can pay for other things, as long as it's benefiting in the end, I know they need some tiny houses out back, but one day I'm gonna get them out there, but it's just, those kind of things are very important, that backstory, so that they know exactly what you're doing, and put in there how many people you're serving. They know Harmony Home, they know Family Promise, they know Salvation Army, but a lot of times they have no clue to how many people you're really serving. They may think, 10 or 20 kids go through there, when you see 300 or 400. Yeah, so that's important to them, because they don't know those answers. They don't know what goes on. We're not a little bitty tiny town, we're a pretty large town, and so they need to know all the information that you can give them. They need to know that. We're trying to step outside the box here with what we do, because we've been in a box for a long time. So we're trying to step outside that box, and I'm kind of hard-headed, so. I'm extremely hard-headed. So I just think it needs to get done, and if we don't fight for it, it'll never happen.
And you're basically competing with other nonprofits, and that's why it's so important to have.
Will there,
Tell your story.
will there be a submission process for reimbursement once the money's awarded?
Yes, so you'll receive what's called a subrecipient handbook, and it'll have all your forms. The forms are available on the website, the applicator forms are on the website also. But you have to have those, you have to have each of those, thank you, Clark, you have to have each of those documents turned in by the 10th of every quarter, so 4 times a year. But you'll receive a book, and then we also have a training session. So we have a training where you come in and we go through each of those documents. And I'm always, There's data in there. If we need help getting area data, we can pull that data for you. You know, we can help do that. We have policy map that we can help pull that low to moderate income data, and it has a lot of census information, but it also has other survey information in there too. So we're here to help, not just, you know, be communicative with us, not just turn in the application, oh, we'll hear from you, because I'm probably gonna ask a lot of questions, and I'm gonna come and visit you, and I'm gonna walk around and see what's going on, because that's important for us to know what you're doing, because you're partnering with us. That's what you're doing when you apply for this money, is you're partnering with the city, and we're partnering with HUD to be able to make things happen in our community.
So,
In a city of our size, we should be going crazy doing stuff.
so we should expect a site visit between the time we turn in an application and.
And the time it goes to city council, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes. I will be visiting.
Will you need board members there?
No, doesn't necessarily have to have board members, just somebody to walk us through and tell us, this is how it works, and this is how it goes, and this is what we wanna see. Cause sometimes putting that, you know, we need to be able to put our comments in that book when we give that book to city council. We want them to, you know, we wanna be a voice, we want you to be your own voice, but we also wanna be a voice for you when it comes to that. Any other questions?
This may not have anything to do with it, but it's just because I'm curious. You said that y'all were, if everything works out, Trump said 887?
888.
88, and 15% will go to the public services. Where
Yes.
does that other money?
Admin. It goes to admin.
Admin
It
and
goes to
housing
other
rehab.
programs. We
So-
have other programs that we assist with, which is rental assistant, housing rehab. So that money is just not, we are accountable to that to HUD, and we have to
I
have
was just
that
wondering if there were
database.
other programs.
I'm sorry?
I said I was just wondering what other programs. that you-
Well, we have a housing rehab and emergency rehabs. We have a lawn mowing program. And all of these programs are targeted towards the elderly and the disabled. And so that's where most of our money goes to is, you know, it gets out of hand. A lot of people are complaining about, you know, people, they don't mow their lawns, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? People age and can't push a lawnmower. And so we have this program, and we do that throughout the year. Then we also have emergency rehabs. We have the roof that caved in an elderly person. We have the floor that caved in. We have the
We know
sewer
their whole
lines.
floor just fell out.
Dropped. We have the sewer lines. All those are emergencies. I mean, we have, we've had 95-year-old, very sweet lady who was, basically her house got full of sewage. And it was her sewage, her plumbing, her lines, and we wouldn't, and it was when the weather was horrible, and so we said, well, absolutely not. And so we get people out there, plumber, and with the horrible wind and the cold weather, but she got
it fixed.
She got it fixed, and she was able to stay in her house. The house wasn't damaged, and,
She can live out.
and she's
got new sewer lines.
yeah.
And then stuff like that is small, but it's important. And that's another reason why these applications and what people wanna do in the community are so important, because we have those programs. But who knows if there's not another program that we need to be looking at for the next couple of years? Yes, we have that. Maybe there's something for children or something that we don't know about, and we need to invest in that. So I think that's important, you know, but if we don't know, we can't do anything about it.
One of the big things is that we're trying to prevent homelessness. And so we have a rental assistance program where dad gets sick, he doesn't go to work, he doesn't get paid. And so within a month, the person can be homeless. And so those are the kind of programs that we use, the remainder of that money. So,
We have single moms that are getting out of, you know, horrible relationships, and they can't, you know, there's no room for them here or here or here, and they've got a job, they've got a house, but they can't, you know, they just need a little bit of help for just a couple months, and, you know, so, you know, we don't have housing vouchers, we don't have TDRA, but we at least can help them get over that hump to where maybe they can apply for, you know, because our housing authority is so overwhelmed here.
so that's where that money goes, for those programs. We wanna prevent homelessness, we have rental assistance. We have the emergency rehab for the elderly to keep them independent, to keep them in their homes. And then we have the rehabs where those are a little bit more involved. And so we run a number of programs that are to help the community. And we mostly concentrate on the elderly or the disabled because that's where, the biggest need is.
Right, and I did have, so write this down if you don't already know, the 24 CFR 570 subpart C. That will help you if you can look it up online. And that helps you know exactly what is eligible and helps you kind of put it in your mind for what is an area benefit. Like an area benefit, I'll just give you some examples. Acquisition of land, where you want to build a park or, a picnic area, health clinic construction, development of a community center. And no, we don't have enough money to do all of that for one organization, but when you partner with, you pull funding from all your resources, then you might can do something, Maybe it's just 20 or 30,000, maybe it's 40,000, but that helps, that gets you started. That can be a good factor in that. And that would be for like the area benefit. And then you have, like we talked about, limited clientele, acquisition of a building for homeless shelter, rehab, public services, just like feeding or housing. But then also, so you bought some land, you bought land and you're gonna build a senior citizen center or a community center on that land. And you've got all the funding for it, but it needs cleared. It needs cleared. And it can be used for that, So there's a lot of reasons. Look at that, and then that will kind of help you know what service, how to word your application, how that needs to happen. It helps a little bit if you know a little bit about the dollar you're applying for. Okay? Any other questions? And I'm always available. You can call me, email me, anytime. Also, as you're leaving today, there are some QR codes on this table out here. So we are doing the 5-year consolidated plan, and that is, like we said, a picture of what we want the city to look like. And if you can get, they're laminated codes out there, one's in English, one's in Spanish. If you can just put them up, and there's some little posters there, that kind of explain what it is. They do not have to put personal information. It's not just for low-income people. We want everybody from the people that live on the streets to the people that live in the mansions out in Shiloh Estates to fill out that survey. It helps us, like I said, figure out what we're gonna do with our contract. Know what we're gonna do.
What that is it's not, I'm sorry, Tammy, but it's not for the city of Odessa. It's for the city of Odessa as an entire municipality, not like the organization. So there, where you can put a need for, do we need more daycare? What do we need? Do we need more
There's
parks?
a checklist
Do we
of things
need-
in that survey.
And that gives an opportunity for funding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we want them to be filled out as many as we can, because that can also
It can
help
affect
us
our funds.
get more than just the small amount that we're getting now.
And you don't put, there's no name, no address. I think you do put your zip code that you live in and your income level, but you're not putting, it's on Survey Monkey, there's
It's
no
an
huge.
average. It's an
Yeah,
average.
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
an
an
average.
average income, no identifying information in there at all. And we would like to get,
As many as we
I
can.
want thousands and thousands.
Because, if people don't understand that, that is what's gonna help the community. So if we get more funding, well, then we get to do more things to improve. And so we're coming to y'all to say, can you please, put those out so they can go ahead and fill those out. We're not gonna see them, they're gonna go directly to our consultant.
yeah, they go to her.
So they
She
can go
gives us
ahead
a
and
total of the information.
get all that squared away, so, she's working, we have hired a consultant for that, so it's so important, and we beg business or anybody that's willing to do that and encourage people. We're gonna put those out here at, the first floor where people, if they're waiting while they're paying their water, maybe they'll be encouraged to do
You'll
that.
probably see me at Target.
We're trying to get,
My QR suit with my little QR code on the front.
in the past, we looked at the comp plan from the one that was done 5 years ago, and it was so sad because I think it was only 55.
54 people
Yeah,
filled out the survey.
and that's, we're not doing justice to ourselves, we can do better, we really can, cause it's just basically asking
We're
what
just
we,
cutting our own
what we
toes.
want, yes,
Yeah. It's just,
the needs that we have, so it's
Yeah.
so important.
Cause I'm sure you hear people complain about what's going on, well, you don't ever get involved. You're just, you're not helping the problem. Tell us what you want. If nobody knows, what we need and what the expectations, they're never gonna get met, nothing's ever gonna happen, so.
And the funding is just gonna start to decrease, I mean, it has been just decreasing, so.
And I think if they see what we're doing here and that we're trying to elicit some change, I think that we'll get, I wish the room was full right now. It's not, but that's okay, we're gonna get there, one way or another, we're gonna get there. Does anybody have any more questions? We're done. We
Yeah,
are
do you have
done.
any questions, feel free to call Tammy or myself, our funds are in there.
Sure. You're welcome.
Now, you said your cards are out there? Like your personal cards?
They're
In the folder.
Here?
Mhm.
Yep, I can give you one. Here, I'll give you one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
being here. I appreciate you.